one of the interesting things when three people write presentations that never having seen the other ones, you always wonder, are we going to contradict each other, which actually would be probably more fun from your standpoint. But I think what you're going to see here, hopefully, is me kind of stitching together some of the things that the other speakers before me have been talking about. The other thing, I've taken a radical approach to this. I'm a data person. Empiritas actually comes from empirical and veritas together, so truth through analytics. And but there will not be a single number on any of these slides. I actually do this with my son, who's 16 years old, and so he goes onto the internet and gets me cartoons that meet the things that we're talking about, right? So as Roger said, I've been involved in this digital marketing game for a long time, going back to what I kind of call the halcyon days of 2000, right? And go back and say, remember, that was when sock puppets were doing Super Bowl ads, and we were giving 25-year-old kids millions of dollars for internet businesses that didn't have a business plan that ever showed them making money, and we wondered why it went wrong, right? So, but at that time when we started looking at digital, what we were thinking about is saying, hey, this is a new way to connect with customers that's going to help us be more targeted, get the right message in front of the right customers at the right time, and help us save money, and also to help make our customers happier. And so 15 years later, what really happened was we shifted a heck of a lot of money from traditional to digital, right? 30, 40% of our spending now as dealers in that category. We killed the newspapers, right? So that's one thing that we accomplished. But the results from us as dealers has been somewhat uninspiring. That the marketing cost, I went back and checked these numbers, right? In 2000, we spent 1.02% of revenue on marketing. Last year it was 1.04%. So, I mean, that's pretty flat. And I think if you look at most of the surveys would say our customers are not necessarily any happier. They're more kind of confused sometimes than not. So, why was this? And who do we have to blame? And I'd say we have ourselves to blame as dealers. And really what we were trying to do was we were trying to graft a digital marketing onto what I'd call an analog experience. And so, what I mean by that is that we use technology to bring the customers in, but we don't then deliver on an experience that's fundamentally different. Dave was talking about some of the experiences that our consumers have outside of automotive and how important that is that we think about that. And I'll just give you something to think about here is I can go onto my phone, which I left on the table, and in 3 clicks I can order my favorite pizza. I can then watch my pizza go into the oven. I can watch it be delivered. I know that John is coming in a blue Camry to deliver that pizza to my door. It's that $10 pizza I can understand everything about. But when I go to schedule my appointment at my dealership, sometimes it's 2 or 3 calls, and then another 2 or 3 calls to check on the status while I'm there. So we have this disconnect between how we're trying to bring people to our stores and then the experience that they're getting there. So it's no wonder that when we put a lead form up in front of a customer, about 90% of the time they say, no, thank you, I'll just kind of figure this out on my own and keep going. So let's kind of talk about a few things that went wrong along the way before we talk about some solutions. So the first thing is that the role of media has changed. So it used to be that you could do a lot of broadcast media and take out a few ads in the newspapers. Roger was talking about how simple this job used to be, right? You took out a few ads in the newspaper, you did some drive time radio, and wham, people showed up. Let me give you a little story of when I was at AutoNation. We had this GM of a Toyota store that wanted to run this program he had run before we bought the store. It's a rollback program, right? So where we go buy a stripper car, no AC, no cheap radio, and no power locks, price it at what it had been priced at 10 years ago, blast the radio during drive time, and sure enough, people are going to show up on Saturday. So to me, it doesn't really quite work that way anymore. And he said, no, just run it for me. I said, fine, I'll run it, right? So about noon on Saturday, I get a call from him bitching at me because he had sold out of all of his stripper cars. So I kind of chuckled a little bit and said, so you're mad at me because we sold the cars that I advertised for you. And he said, so what really happened? What happened was that people listened to that advertising on the radio, and we can see it because we can see what happens to our website. They show up at work, they get online, they look at the cars that we've been advertising, they made a decision right then and there. Either that car is for them or it's not for them, right? So the people who the cars were for them, they showed up. The people who looked at it and said, you know, I live in South Florida. No air conditioning is not going to work for me, right? So they didn't show up. So we need to understand that tire kicking is all done online. So we got to align what we're doing there on the radio with what we're doing online. The second thing is I want to talk about the mix is no longer clear. You know, as Roger's talking about on the media, you know, in 2001 it was really simple. You know, I took out some autoTRADER ads, I bought some leads, I hung up a website. Now there's a whole lot more. There's SEM, all those other things, SEM, display. Probably in the time I've been talking, someone's invented 2 or 3 more digital categories for us to invest in. And to echo Dave's point is that we talked then about attribution, right? And we tend to then think about what I call the last mile. So I try to attribute everything to that last thing that brought me into the store. And that, you know, that's the equivalent of the advertising I saw between the second and third period of game last night being what brought me to buy the beer that I had. Well, you know, maybe it was the million other commercials I'd seen before that. Maybe it was recommendations of a friend. And understanding that we have to figure out that not all of our advertising is necessarily that last mile, but I think of it as filling the pipeline, right? So how do I talk to people and get them to do different things along the way to getting there rather than focused on immediate gratification? So the next one is around no road to the sale. So we were talking before about you know, different websites out there, like the ones, you know, that Dave was talking about. Every single one of those, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. When I go to Delta Airlines to go buy a ticket, it walks me through the process. I know exactly where I am and what I need to do. Same thing with Amazon, same thing with Domino's Pizza. You know where you are in the process. For our customers, there's no shopping cart, right, for them. There's no directional signs out there for them to find their way through. And so when they look at our websites, it's not surprising they often get lost, confused, and know where to go. And the consequence of that and why it hurts our digital marketing return on investment is we end up buying that customer multiple times at multiple different points in time because we didn't satisfy their need of what they wanted to do next. So they left our site to go find pricing. They left our site to go get a comparison on what their trade-in should be worth. And then we're going to go have to buy them and get them to come back over and over again. So the other thing is that was great about when we thought about the promise of digital marketing was that we could now finally engage in a dialogue, right? It's now we have this cheap method of an ongoing communication with a consumer, and we could have that dialogue going on over a long period of time without having to constantly invest in doing that. But that's the promise, but we didn't actually use it that way, right? If you think about the way we typically deal with a customer is we get a lead in, and for the next 15 to 30 days, I'm going to hound you, right? And then I'm going to forget about you. I'm going to forget about you to either, you know, something tells me that you might be back in market again, or that I desperately need to sell a certain number of cars, so I'm going to go back out and re-engage you. And so we're looking for an ROI against an individual transaction rather than a relationship. So you know, I always kind of come back to personal relationships here, right? So that's like if you took out with your significant other, did the first dinner pay off for you, right? Is that really where the payoff was, or was it over a set of a lifetime with it? And we constantly look for an ROI in that next transaction rather than recognizing that that person may come back to us later. A good example I've seen a positive side of this is Hyundai America now does, for all the cars that have telematics, they give a monthly health check, right? They take the telematics readings, green, yellow, red sensors, and they don't ask for anything, right? It's just a health check. Just here's where your car is. They get a 50% open rate on that, which is pretty amazing for an email, right? And of that 50% open rate, about 10% of those people schedule an appointment based upon that right there. So and the reason that I think that works and why they constantly get 50% open rate on it, they're not asking for anything. They're asking for a relationship. They're providing information that creates that engagement for the customer. So next challenge is around the one size fits all. I'm not sure what the number is these days. The last time I saw it was 30, 40 hours of online research that customers do prior to walking into a store, and that's an awful lot of work. And you think about that, we always talk about in the industry of how many weeks a customer has to work to be able to afford a car, right? You always see that number from time to time. Well, think about this. They spent a week just researching that car, let alone having to earn the money to pay for that car. And then what happens when they come into our store? We largely throw their work into the dustbin, right? We don't respect the work that they did. We should be encouraging them to bring all that homework into the store on Saturday and picking up exactly where they left off. And an interesting question I find to ask ourselves as an industry, which of these statements in the greeting is more common? It's, let me explain to you how when a customer comes in, the first one is, let me explain to you how we sell cars here, right? Or is it, hey, let me understand where you are in the shopping process and what you'd like to do next, right? I'd argue the first one happens a lot more than the second one in our stores. And effectively, what we've told the consumer at that point in time is I'm completely disrespecting all that week that you spent preparing to come in here, and are we spending as much time preparing for a customer to come to us as they are, right? And so how do we work through that gap? So what's the implications of that? And we've done this a lot of different slides up here and thinking about in terms of what happened to the pre-digital leader when we hit the digital divide. I'll put the challenge out. If we can help find me an example of where the pre-digital leader is still the leader after the other side of the digital divide, and not because I don't think it can't be done. I think the challenge is, and it's not because any of the players here at the bottom, it's not that they didn't see it coming, right? It's they couldn't get together what I call the institutional energy to make that difference, right? How do I now start to invest and do things fundamentally differently than the things I've always done or that are in my comfort area? One of my favorite examples, I don't have it up here with Blockbuster, but Blockbuster was given the opportunity to buy Netflix. I believe it was for $60 million. Said it's too much money, right? I don't really think it was too much money, right? It was really, that's uncomfortable to me. That takes me outside of where I want to be, right? Barnes & Noble, I'd argue survived here, maybe not thrived, but survived because they were able to belatedly get together that institutional energy to put the Nook forward. Borders didn't, right? So, as we think about where the industry is going, I'm not saying that, this is kind of the reverse of the advertisement we have from investors all the time that, I'm not saying past performance dictates the future, right? We have a chance to be different, but we've got to make that choice. I spend enough time kind of straddling the border here between our countries, and I hear from a lot of my Canadian dealer friends this perfectly logical statement, right? Which they look south, right? They look at us and say, here's what they see. They say the U.S. is ahead of us in digital, and the margins in the U.S. suck, right? Every one of my American clients would kill for the margins at your stores, right, when I look at it, right? So the logic trail is that because the U.S. is ahead on digital and U.S. margins suck, therefore digital leads to lower margins. And there's a certain truth to that, right? There's a certain truth that left unchecked that may be true. But I think we really have to go a little bit deeper and ask what really went on in the United States. We didn't make our margins lower in the U.S. We allowed other people to do it, right? We saw other things coming at us. We weren't willing to do what the customer wanted in terms of transparency, in terms of a different process. And so other disintermediaries, like my friends at TrueCar, right, came in and they made promises. Well, the only thing that they had to promise was lower price, right? So it became all about price. So, I think that we had an option as dealers in the U.S., and we didn't take that option. We didn't meet the customer where they were. So when I think about, and let's then understand that those same players, they're peering over the border here as well. And we have an opportunity, I think, to embrace digital in a different way. In many other categories, digital isn't all about price. Kevin was talking about the fact that he chose a more expensive adapter, right, because of the fact that it had better merchandising, right? You can go out on any product that we buy on the web. I went out and when we moved recently and bought a new large screen TV, I could buy that same Samsung TV in 4 different channels at 4 different prices, and it was a pretty substantial difference between the cheapest one and the most expensive one. I didn't buy the most expensive one, but I didn't buy the cheapest one either. And because there's other things we care about when we look at the internet for other channels. We look about convenience, selection, and I'd argue our customers want the same thing. We've made it all about price, or at least the disintermediaries have made it all about price. I think our customers want to get relevant, targeted messages from us about buying, what we call the highest involvement product, right? It's amazing to me. I'm actually, confession is, I'm actually not a car guy. I'm not fascinated by all the product that's sitting out here. I love the industry. I love what we do in it. And I'm amazed when I go to a cocktail party, everyone wants to talk about cars, right? They want to talk, and the number of times I get asked about how to buy cars and different things is really amazing to me. So customers want this to be more than about price. They want it to be about convenience. They want it to be about selection. They want a number of different things for it to be, and they want a seamless process that informs and empowers them. The discussion about selling F&I on a tablet, one of the things that wasn't mentioned on my resume is I worked for JM Family Enterprises, and I built the tools that you guys bought from us at DealerTrack, right, for doing F&I products, right? 10 years ago, I was convinced that a consumer will buy more F&I if properly put to them on a tablet than your best F&I guys would do, because it's comfortable to them. This is something that's around trust, convenience, all the things that need to be done. I thought we could do with technology. So let me talk about embracing digital, right? What does embracing digital really mean, right? And how do we get more value out of digital? And the first thing is I'm going to go back to talking about traditional, right? Which is what in a digital world we have to think about our traditional media differently. It plays a different role than it used to. Part of the reason we haven't gotten value in digital is we're still doing traditional the same way. And my question would be, even in some cases, of why are we really doing traditional for certain things? I looked at in South Florida at AutoNation, I had a means to communicate with 60% of the customers in South Florida who could afford to buy a car. So how much broadcast media do I need to do rather than to engage in a customer? So one of it is just to think about how we still use digital and what am I trying to do. Using traditional. And one of the things I should be doing with traditional is driving people to my digital, right? That's what, it's actually interesting. I mean, Amazon spends an awful lot of money on traditional media, if you look at it, if you sit down, but they're using that to drive them to their digital properties. The second thing is understanding what's the role of each of those digital categories. I was taking notes, Dave, on your attribution slide there, because I think it's important to understand that we have to think about not all of our digital media is designed to drive a sale, right? I know that sounds a little bit antithetical. Maybe it's there to drive awareness. Maybe it's there to drive people from one digital property to another. But we have to think about what the purpose of each of those things in our digital media are. The third one is thinking about our websites differently. I actually don't like the term website, right? Our websites too often are brochureware today. I think about it as our digital storefront, right? That our websites really are the way most of our customers will come to us first, right? So, as our digital storefront, 10 times as many people are going to walk through that website as they are going to walk through our door. And what are they seeing? What's the experience that they're having? I mean, most of you are fanatics about what goes on within your store, how your store looks every day. I loved the slide that Kevin had on the presentation of inventory, right? You'd never make it look like that one on the right, as it first went up with, all the crap there. I mean, you get out there, God bless you, you have to shovel your, the snow off it, you have to get the cars ready. And even inside the store, making sure the washrooms look good. You're fanatics about that. And I think we aren't fanatics about our digital storefronts the same way. And for any of our OEM friends here, one of my pet peeves is that you're fanatics about your physical plant, how you want me to remodel my store, but you let too many people get away with the lowest common denominator websites out there. So how do we think about having great digital stores to complement our physical stores? The fourth point I would make is digital's about being transparent and open, right? Not faking it, right? That we need to, if a customer can find out some information on the web someplace, they ought to find it out from me, right? If pricing is something that they need to be comfortable in making a decision, they ought to find it on my website, not have to go to some third-party site and come back. First of all, it's about that experience of the customer. The second, as I said, we paid for them to come to my site, our sites once. Then we made them go away because we weren't willing to accommodate either an information or a process need they had. Now I got to go grab them back, right? And that costs me money each time I do that. But it's more than costing me money. It's costing me trust, right? That I forced them away. The fifth one is around respecting that investment in the customer's time that they put in, right? That I look at a seamless online to offline experience as a way of building stickiness. If I'm going to value that time that they put in, save them time when they come to the store, then that becomes a reason to shop with me, right? If they've got to start the process all over again on Saturday morning, then they're going to go somewhere else. And then the final one is around aligning the in-store and the digital experience. You were talking about the phone as being a tracking device, right? So if any of us, we went through a big thing around pricing strategy at AutoNation, and we gave our general managers some choices and some different pricing strategies. And we had some that wanted to go down the path of a kind of a low price on the internet and then a traditional sales process out the other end. And I always used to ask the question of, so help me go through this scenario. If we got a lower price on the web than the first pencil that I quote when they come in the store, how do you recover from the situation of where they go back out to the web and show you that the price was lower on the web than what you just quoted them, right? That I think that we've got to understand that there isn't a digital experience and a store experience. The two of them are coming together, particularly since most of us are carrying a device that we're very comfortable using to get the digital with us when we come to the store, and how do we facilitate and make that easier. So, at the end of this, what I'm really looking at here is, how do we at the end control our own destiny? How do we make sure that as we move across what I kind of call the digital divide, that the leader here is your competitor. At the end of it, you're the one, it's your logo that's going to be there, that's going to be the leader at the end of the digital divide. And I think it really is a choice. It's a choice about, can we at our own stores gather up that institutional energy to start thinking about the world differently. And I listened to a futurist a few months ago, and I usually think that's all hogwash of these things, but she said something to me that I have taken to heart, which is how I now do these presentations, is go find a 16-year-old mentor, right? They see the world differently than we do, right? It's funny, I was joking with someone beforehand, that slide I had with the vinyl and the CD, my son looked at that and he asked me what the CD was, right? I would have thought he would ask me what the vinyl was, right? But no, he's seen vinyls coming back, but he's never seen a CD player, right? They just see the world differently, and I think it's important that whether it's through the kind of interactions that Dave was talking about, making sure we get outside of our stores and constantly ask ourselves to relate how we're using the internet in other parts of our lives, and asking the question of why we can't do that in our business, but also thinking about the fact that most of our customers are spending their time doing things in a digital world that we've got to keep embracing and bringing back into what we're doing. So, thank you.